Hello, my name is Joshua Gavi. I welcome you to Plant Tissues. How are plant tissues classified according to their functions? Plant tissues are divided into growth, which we call embryonic tissues, supporting, filling, and photosynthetic tissues, the ground tissues. We have the conductive, or what we call the vascular tissues, and the covering, which we call the dermal tissues. Embryonic tissues, they are the primary meristems, secondary meristems, then the supporting tissues, we have the collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Filling and photosynthetic tissues, we have the photosynthetic parenchyma, storage parenchyma. Then we have the conductive tissues where we have the xylem, the phloem. Covering tissue, we have the epidermis and peridoderm. Which are the growth tissues of plants? How do they classify and where can they be found? The growth tissues of the plant are the meristems. Meristems are the tissue that produce the plant growth, giving birth to all other tissues. They are formed of undifferentiated cells having intense cell division rate. Meristem classify as primary meristems and as secondary meristems. Primary meristems are formed in the apex of the stem and in the lateral buds of the stem and in the bases and the tips of the shoots and within the root cap. Primary meristems are responsible for primary growth, that is, lengthening of the plant. The secondary meristems are those that make the plant grow in thickness, or what we call secondary growth, and they are formed by tissues that thicken the stem, that is the cambia, and pharyngogen, or the cork cambia. What is the difference between the lateral and apical buds of the plant? The lateral buds are portion of the meristematic tissues located at the base of the shoots, whereas apical buds are portion of the meristematic tissues situated at the tip of the stem and shoots. What are apical meristems? What type of plant growth does this meristem promote? Apical meristems are those primary meristems formed in the apex of the stem and in the tips of the shoots and the roots. The apical meristem are responsible for primary growth of the plant. What are lateral meristem? Where can they be found? And which type of plant growth do they promote? Lateral or secondary meristems are the cambium and phloem, also known as the cork cambium tissues, from the stem, branches, and roots that by mitosis generate other tissues. This tissue participate in the secondary growth of the plant, that is, thickening of the stem, branches, and roots. What are the main features of the meristematic cells? Why do these cells need to have high mitotic rate? Meristematic cells are very thin cell walls. They have small vacuole, a well-centralized nucleus. They are constantly undergoing mitosis. Meristematic cells need high mitotic rate because they are responsible for the plant growth. What is the best identification hypothesis for plant tissues seen under the microscope, having most cells undergoing cell division? The best hypothesis is that the tissue is a sample of meristematic tissue. Meristematic tissues seen under microscope have many cells undergoing mitosis. Which are the plant tissues responsible for supporting of the plant? The plant supporting tissue are the collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Collenchyma is made of living and elongated cells that accumulate cellulose and pectin in some regions of the cell wall, making them unequally thick and thus providing flexibility. The sclerenchyma is made up of mostly dead cells killed by lignin deposition. Lignin is an impermeable biopolar, forming elongated, rigid, and impermeable fibers. The sclerenchyma is the plant tissue widely used in textile industries. Which is the plant tissue responsible for filling the space between other tissues? The plant-filling tissue is generally called parenchyma. The plant parenchyma can be divided into photosynthetic parenchyma tissue that has cells with many chloroplasts and high photosynthesis rate, found mainly in leaves, and storage parenchyma specialized in storage of water, e.g. in cactus, starch, or air in aquatic plants. Where in the leaves is the photosynthetic tissue often located? The main photosynthetic tissue is the photosynthetic parenchyma, also known as chlorechyma. Do not confuse with cholenchyma. Often located between the superior and inferior epidermis of the leaves. How are water, mineral salts, and food, that is sugar, transported through the plant? Water, mineral salts, and sugar are transported throughout the plant through conductive vessels formed by specialized tissues. Which are the specialized conductive tissue of the plant? The vascular tissues of the plant are the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is the plant tissue that forms the vessels that conducts water and mineral salts absorbed from the soil to the plant cells. The phloem is the plant tissue that forms the vessels that conducts dissolved sugars from the leaves, where they are produced by photosynthesis, to other plant cells. What are the cell types that form the xylem, and what are the main features of these cells? The main cells of the xylem are the tracheids and the vessels elements. These only in angiosperms. The tracheids and the vessel elements are dead cells that have lost their cytoplasm and only their cell wall impregnated with lignin, an impermeable biopora. The tracheids form tubes that communicate with the neighboring tubes with pores. Vessel elements do not present pores, but instead communicate with the successful vessel elements through perforation in their extremities. What are the cell types that form the phloem? What are the main features of those cells? The main cells that form the phloem are the sieve elements and companion cells. Sieve elements form the vessel walls, They are living enucleated cells positioned in cells forming a sieve tubes. Between successful vessel elements, there are communicating pores. The companion cells are located outside and alongside the sieve tubes. They help in the absorption of material to be transported. What are the vascular cambia? What is its function? Vascular cambium is the secondary meristematic tissue that in the root and the stem, they form the vascular tissue, the xylem and the phloem of the plant. Usually, the outer side of the vascular cambium produces a layer of the phloem, and the inner side of the tissue produces a layer of the xylem. What are vascular bundles? How does the configuration of the vascular bundles within the stem differentiate monocots from dicots? Vascular bundle are segments of the xylem associated with the phloem that run longitudinally within the stem. In dicot, the vascular bundle are organized side by side, forming concentric rings. In monocot, the vascular bundles are scattered and do not form rings. What are the main plant tissues that form rings observed in the stem section of some trees? The rings observed in the stem cross section of the dicot trees are made of conductive tissue, that is the xylem and the phloem. How can the age of the tree be estimated from the analysis of the rings present on a cross section of its stem? For the growth of the tree, it is necessary to have formation of new vessels within the stem, a task performed by the vascular cambium. Vascular cambium is more active in hot season, that is summer and spring, generating lighter bands made of larger calibrated vessels. During winter and fall, the vascular cambium produces the opposite. So smaller calibrated vessels, a dark band appears outside the previous lighter band. Therefore, two rings band are made yellow, one lighter and the other dark. By direct count of these band pairs, one can estimate the age of the tree. What are the plant tissues that constitute the functional structures of the leaf veins? The leaf veins are made up of vascular tissue. They constitute the xylem and the phloem that respectively conduct water and mineral nutrients, the xylem, and the sugar, the phloem. Which are the plant tissues specialized in covering? The covering tissues or dermal tissues of the plant are the epidermis that cover the leaves and the young stem and shoots, and the periderm, a tissue that substitutes the epidermis in stems, shoots, and roots. The periderm is made up of phloem, phloem, and suber or cork. Which are the plant tissues that cover stem and leaves? The stem are covered by the epidermis, having stomata, cuticle, and photosynthetic cells. As in monocots, or alternatively, the epidermis is substituted by periderm, which is made up of phloem, phloem, and cork. As in dicot and gymnosperms, the leaves are covered by epidermis. What is phloem? What is its function? Phloem is known as the cork cambium. Is the meristematic plant tissue responsible for the formation of the periderm, the covering of the stem, the shoot, and the roots. The inner side of the phloem layer forms the phloderm, and its outer side forms the cork or suber. The suber secretes suberin, an impermeable substance that impregnates the tissue. Which type of plant tissue is cork? Cork, the material, for example, used to cap wine bottle, is extracted from the suber, a special oak called oak cork. What are plant roots hairs? Where can they be found, and what is their function? The root hairs are external elongated projection of the root epidermis. Their role is to increase the absorption of water by the root. Why does bark often die and break naturally? The bark is the mature periderm of the stem, branches, and roots. It dies and breaks when the structures grow, and thus peridermal suber formed are already dead cells. Rupture. What is the leaf cuticle? The leaf cuticle is a thinner wax layer made up of chitin and waxes. The outer surface of the leaf epidermis. Its function is to control cellular transpiration. What are the plant tissues that form plant roots? The roots have a central portion called medulla, made of the vascular tissue, inner xylem, outer phloem. The medulla is surrounded by the medullary parenchyma, delimited by pericycle, a meristem that originates the secondary root ramification. Externally, the medulla lies the cortical portion, formed from endodermis, the surroundings of the pericycle. The cortical parenchyma. The covering of the roots is epidermis with root hairs, latterly substituted by suberized cork pallidum. What is the root cap? The root cap is a protective structure located at the tip of the growing root. It protects the meristematic tissue of the root, forming a cap that surrounds the tip. The cover is necessarily since during the growth of the root, the meristem otherwise would be injured by friction with the soil. What are secondary roots? In origin, how secondary roots differentiate from shoots? Secondary roots are ramification of the primary roots. Secondary roots emerge from the pericycle, inner tissue of the root. The shoot originates from the lateral buds of the stem. Therefore, origin of secondary root is endogenous, and origin of the shoot is exogenous. Why do roots of many swamp plants have special morphology? Swamp and marsh plants generally present supporting roots that ramify from portion of the stem above the ground, helping the plant to fix down the muddy and sandy soil. They may also have respiratory roots, pneumatophore, structures that emerge from buried roots to catch oxygen. Thank you very much for participating in plant tissues. Please do like, share, and subscribe.